Christian, today we do a very, very special episode. I thought, why don't I ask the person that I perceive as the expert when it comes to customer success, but really also the whole customer unit and growth? And maybe for those listening, to give more context, Christian was our founding employee and built up the whole customer success team at Yokoy, the company that I co-founded. And so I want to directly dive into the topic of today. A lot of people think they know what customer success is, but there are so many misconceptions. Christian, what is customer success really?
Yeah, I think in the simplest form, it's basically the entire post-sales process and organization in a company. So essentially, if you think about B2B SaaS, right, the point usually where customer success kicks in is somewhere around when you have signed a contract, because what they basically need to do, these departments, is make sure the client comes to a point of first value, right? Whatever the client is looking for in terms of value to derive from the product, this is the point you need to work towards with the client, and customer success would be responsible for that. And then later on, you need to ensure that the client is constantly achieving its objectives, and you need to work with them. And a lot of this work is basically the responsibility of customer success. So they're kind of like in between the sales organization and product.
Mm.
And I think there's probably 100 different definitions out there. And I'm sure you can ask ChatGPT and it's going to give you different ones. But at its core, it's really about making sure the client is deriving value from the product and that you can translate this value into revenue for the company.
And it's really not just checklists and basically a support role, so to say, but it's really much more than this. And this is what I've seen on a daily basis back in the days when we were working super closely together. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes you see companies make when they first start building customer success?
Yeah, I think I get asked a lot from early stage companies who want to build up sales or customer success about different playbooks or frameworks they want to implement, right? So many people are asking, okay, hey, we have a couple of clients, or we have the first 30 clients. How can we now do a referral system, right? How can we do an onboarding? Problem with that perspective is often that referral systems, for instance, or any type of success stories, which you can then use for marketing and all these different playbooks, these growth loops, they go back to a client or a user who needs to be fundamentally happy or satisfied with the value you provide for them in order to talk about you, right? Or in order to help you. The problem is often that when you then dive into this conversation, okay, hey, what value are you actually providing for your client? The statements are often super ambiguous, right? And there is a lot of different ideas out there, but it cannot be broken down really specifically. And I think it's not about breaking this down specifically, but you, from the perspective of the client, it needs to be super clear that they know what kind of objectives they have and they want to pursue, what problems and pains they encounter on the way, and how your product and your services and your entire value proposition as a SaaS company is helping them alleviate the pain, achieve their objectives. When the client can break this down in a super straightforward manner and they're satisfied with how you're helping them, it's a super easy step to ask that client to give you an introduction to someone else, which would be some form of referral, right? To participate in success stories, to do a webinar with you, to do a white paper in their name, because clients want more of a good product, right? And they want to help introduce that product to others. Usually that's the majority of how humans work, right? They're fundamentally good people. And I think the question is, can you articulate your value proposition? And can you say for your specific client, which you have contracted, this is what we're doing for them? And if you can, I think you have a good basis. And oftentimes, right, we also had last year an episode about this product market fit and the different pain caves, right? Like so many things in the early stages go back to issues on the fundamentals, which is super normal that you have to find yourself, who you are in the market, but maybe focus on that first before thinking about what is the best way we can implement a referral program. Because to be honest, I'm pretty sure nowadays, if you ask ChatGPT, how do I implement a referral program? It's going to give you an answer which you can somehow work with, right?
Yeah. So it's really like One of the biggest mistakes then is really like the tendency to jump into tactics without laying the groundwork when it comes to,
Correct.
let's say, product market fit, and also not defining the outcome for the client, which basically should stay on the center stage of what you want to achieve. When we go back to the beginning, who should the first customer success hire be? Like, what background skills do you think are most critical at that stage, and how does this also then evolve over time when the startup becomes a scale up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to the natural evolution of a company, right? You will want to have a revenue pipeline, and then when you have that revenue pipeline, you will have to make sure that you bring these clients live, right? You fulfill your value proposition or whatever you discussed with them. So that will mean you're going to have to do some form of onboarding, right? It doesn't really matter how you call this: onboarding, implementation, ramp up, but you're going to have to make sure that these clients can work with your product and they derive value. So you need to make sure you have that covered. In terms of positions, that's then an onboarding manager, an implementation manager, an onboarding specialist. But you will need to have people who take care of that. And then in the early stage, and then what comes after that is you have brought these clients to a first point of value. You have enabled them to work with your product. Again, probably you will learn a lot from these clients. So it's not going to be so straightforward. You really need these first clients to learn what they're looking for. And so you will need someone who works with them very closely. And then in the classic speak, that would be a customer success manager, right? But in these early stages, these people really need to be all-rounders who can work super closely with product, who are comfortable with navigating a lot of uncertainty, and who are comfortable with kind of doing the full cycle client journey. So they might be involved in the sales process already to help scope the client, to help close them. Then they do the onboarding. Then they do the classic customer success, but again, working closely with product. And they might even have to go back to marketing, right? Or sales to tell them, hey, this is where we can do a success story, right? So you need all rounders. But I think in terms of the skill sets or the part of the client journey, this is what you're looking for with the first hires. Yeah.
And we often had this discussion as well. And also to give a little bit of context, I mean, we were 5 co-founders, and 2 of them, in our case, our target audience being finance managers. 2 of my co-founders are or were CFOs. We also had a very engaged CTO who was super, super close to the clients, always jumped in when there were any issues, or like giving support there. Like, how do you see that? Like, one often says that founders should stay close to the customers at all times. I mean, customer success seems to be an obvious thing that should be founder led. Do you think so, that this should be founder led? Or ask differently, when is the right moment to move from founder led customer success to really a dedicated team?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point because I think that sales should be founder led in the beginning, right? And I mean, I guess it's like common wisdom that it is. And I think that applies to customer success as well. Because if you think about the sales process, right, and different techniques you can apply in sales, like mapping out mutual action plans and all the different sales frameworks like Spiced or Medic or Command of the Message, right? They work backwards from what is the value proposition we're gonna later on deliver to the client, and that's then customer success. So in order to really map out an end-to-end playbook in your revenue org, you need to understand both sales and customer success for your specific product and for your specific clients. And I think the moment you can start hiring people who take that over or kind of evolve that playbook is the moment I think you can explain to them what you're actually doing, right? So if you can explain to someone else how you sell to a prospect, and you can define first parts of your ICP you're hunting for, and you can define what happens once you have a signature, I think that's the moment you can start kind of ramping up other people and a team. But again, your sales team will have to be full cycle, right? And they will have to be all rounders. And the same applies to post sales. So then customer success. But I think that's the rough guidance. I think the first 10 or 20 clients you probably can do on your own, and then you start hiring people. But it depends on the complexity of the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Products which are super complex, you might end up having 10 clients and it's just a lot of work. products who are less complex, you might have 50 clients and you just need like one person, which is one of the founders. It really
Mhm.
depends, I think, on the complexity of the product.
And now you were already mentioning a lot, like also the connection to sales. You were also very early on, like involved in the sales process. A lot of companies treat sales and customer success as totally separate, but I know that you see them as tightly connected. Can you explain how customer success actually informs the sales process?
Yeah, I think there's often, as you said, a division along the lines, and it's really not good because you. So, what sales can learn, or basically learn from customer success, in the sense of how they can map out the sales in a better way, is the value the clients are actually deriving later on in post sales from the product, the type of problems they encounter in daily business, and how that product can help them mitigate these problems, achieve their objectives. And these are information points, data points, which you can translate into messages in your go to market. So when you think about a basic discovery call very early in the sales journey, it's all about asking the right questions. It's all about questions, but the problem is, what question do you ask, right? And usually these questions are informed from what comes later on in the post sales, because there you really see what is going on in the client's business. So it will inform the really questions you ask, which trigger a response on the side of the client. Because the type of question you want to ask is that the client goes, yeah, that's actually a problem. Good point you
Mhm.
asked that. I have no idea, right? And that's then how the conversation continues, and the account executive will take it over and work from there.
Yeah.
And the account executive will do some form of mutual action plan. And sometimes a mutual action plan from the sales perspective ends with the close one, the signature. But that's not client centric, right? The client does not care about the signature.
No, not at all.
Client centric is a deliverable, right? But when do you have that deliverable? It's post sales. So I think an openness on is super helpful from the sales team, not in the sense of customer success will tell you how to sell, but customer success will tell you what type of problems the clients encounter, what solutions they are looking for, and what kind of messages they respond to. And that's super helpful, I think.
And another function, and this is now also getting to the relationship that we had, is like the connection to marketing. So I was leading the marketing, and we were super closely working together. Where does customer success end and customer marketing begin? According to you, who owns referral case studies, upsell campaigns, and so on?
Yeah, I think the probably marketing is the one who's pushing for stories, right? Because they need that, and they obviously want referrals to generate leads then for the sales team. But I think again here you just need a close collaboration, because success stories, for instance, are a super straightforward tool to use in your content marketing or paid socials or whatever. But how do you know what success stories your target audience is responding to, right? Like, how do you know what the right message is? How do you know what to put into that success story? And I think again, the answers to that are post sales, right? You obviously get informed from the sales team on what is converting, right? And what is not converting. But the initial work on, hey, this is really the problems clients encounter out there in real life. And this is a solution they really appreciate. This content will come somewhere post sales. And I think this is then where customer success kicks in. I think you also have to work with product there, right? Because obviously product is building the actual solution, right? But customer success can tell you about the dynamics there. And I think then probably, yeah, you just probably will run into problems that, from the perspective of the customer success team, right? If a marketing team comes to you and says we need success stories, it's work for them, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you might want to think about, do you actually want to give customer success incentives in their variable compensation that they help generate leads, or that they have a number of success stories which they have to push out, or they have to provide these clients, right? because for them it's work. And for them, it's also psychologically, I think what you then often encounter is it sounds like a super easy ask. Hey, can you come up with a client who provides a success story? But what you're doing from the perspective of customer success, right? You're intervening with the relationship, right? And then again, it's super important that you do that, right? You need success stories. You need your own clients to vouch for you, right? It's this social proof. It's super important. But speaking only from customer success, it's kind of noise, right? Because you're asking your client for a favor. And usually what happens is, right, in any relationship, someone will then ask a favor back, right? So
Of course.
when there's something not working with the product, or you have, I don't know, budget overruns or delays, or, they've been asking for a feature which you don't want to give or you can't give, right? Like the customer success manager, it's like red alert, right? Oh my God, like they've been
Now
asking
I
for
need
this
to
feature
deliver.
for 3 months, and now I'm asking for a success story. So we owe them. So, but I think, to be honest, or the people listening out there who want to build this up, like you have to be firm, like really push for the success stories. It's really about challenging the customer success team. Okay, but why can this client, if you are saying this client is happy, they're not they're not at risk of churn, or they just renewed and you have a good relationship with them, why can they not provide a success story? I think you need to be firm and really play it objectively, because what you need to ask customer success on the customer success perspective, how's the client health? And there people might be prone to say it's pretty good. Okay, but if it's pretty good, then why not do a success story? Oh, okay, no, it's actually not so good. Yeah, okay, but why is it not so good? Then we probably have to do something there, right? We have to improve the client health. So I think you can play it very objectively to find out where do we have the potential.
Yeah, and I think they are also like, and this goes now over like a little bit beyond the question, but I find it very important that on the one hand, like these three functions, like sales, customer success, and marketing, work super closely together. For example, sales has such a leverage, especially at the beginning when they are negotiating contracts, and especially when you're at the beginning also of your startup journey. Sometimes you also give discounts, but the discount doesn't just need to involve like that you give only, but you can also expect, like, if I give you a discount, or if we do special offers, then I also can bring into the contract the fact that like we will get a customer success case. And this is such an easy tool and has such a powerful return, like a few months down the line. And it's really something where we like had a lot of good stories afterwards coming out of it. And another thing that you were touching upon is, I feel like that because we were working so closely together. I mean, I wasn't always in customer calls, but I was working very closely with you and your team. And so it also helped the insights because you're on a daily basis talking to customers. Who, if not you and your team, know exactly what are the pain points? How do they describe the product themselves? How do they think about it? Where are they going to actually get more knowledge about the space and so on? So for me, it was always super important to improve the positioning and messaging, also based on your insights, the insights from sales, and also like taking the basic chats at the beginning of a conversation just to figure out, hey, which events are they intending? And there were so many feedbacks from you and the sales team where you would actually get back to me and say, hey, they're going to this event in Germany or this event in the UK. And so really leveraging this as a team, because that can be super powerful. You were already mentioning that also the close collaboration with product. So how did you experience like the best way of giving structured feedback to product without it just being a wish list from a few very loud customers that might not even be the perfect ICP?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is like two classic problems in customer success, right? Because in B2B, you have to be very precise on the different stakeholders you need to manage, right? You will have the economic buyer, right, which will own the budget and in the end make the final call on if you're gonna buy the product, if you're gonna buy additional modules, if you renew, or if you renew at a lower rate. But in daily life, you will not work as a company and as a customer success team with that economic buyer, most likely, right? You will work with different users, and some of your users might be your champions and your influencers. But in the end, they will be the ones who use the product on a daily basis on a specific reason. So if you have touch points then with the client, you will have touch points overall, most likely with these users on an operational basis, right? So what they are telling you, the feedback they give will be pertaining to specific user feedback, which is obviously important, right? Because you want to have an extremely fluent user experience and the users need to be happy in the long run. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the economic buyer is happy or more satisfied when you implement all that user feedback, right? Because the economic buyer will have specific objectives which are very closely tied to the initial buying reason why they bought this product. And these will be on a higher level. And the economic buyer wants these objectives to be achieved. There might be a cost when they don't achieve these objectives, a cost of inaction, which is something you can use in sales, but then later on you have to manage in customer success. And you need to make sure that the economic buyer has their objectives achieved, right? And you manage their expectations. So two things. On the one hand, you need to map out a clear distinction between what type of level and user is giving a specific feedback and how's that tying back into the overall client health. And you need to be precise towards product and what type of feedback we are looking at, right? Is that feedback for the users or is that feedback from the economic buyer on a higher level? And the second thing, which also goes back to your question, okay, what happens if I have a very diverse client base, or I later on find out I have a client base and only 70% map to the ICP, which we now, after a lot of work, found out works for us. You, again, simply have to be precise about that, right? Because you obviously want to maximize your ARR in the long run. For sales, that will mean that they're hunting after a specific ICP. And for customer success, that will mean they want to maximize their net retention. And sometimes this simply means that you cannot do on a product side certain things which a non-ICP customer is asking for. When an ICP customer is asking for, product has to make a call if they want to do a certain investment on product developments because they think it helps us in the long term, right? So in the end, I think my advice is really be precise on what a new feature, or if you address the feedback, what will change in your numbers, right? Will this affect your churn predictability, right? Your renewal rates, your upsell pipeline? Will this create a situation where your daily users are kind of happy and kept silent? Or does that make an impact on the economic buyer? Will you get the economic buyer to be available for a success story, for an interview, for a post on social media? Like, what will happen? And I know that not every single feature or product development can be specifically tied back to that. But again, you have to be strict on developing these sort of investment cases, right? Because what will happen is that, I don't know, 50% of the feedback or what customer success is pushing for you, you just don't know what will be different if we do it. And that's just a super valuable conversation then to have with product. And I think there's a few techniques like ask the customer success team, okay, if you just have 3 different features which you really want to have, like solutions, what would it be in the next quarter and why? Because obviously they have a wish list of like 20 and product will only have time for 5 or something like that. So have an honest conversation about that.
And you already now dropped a few like metrics that you normally track in order to make a decision. How do you decide what data to track to know if a customer is also healthy and then also has a potential to give you great customer feedbacks or referrals?
The overall metric to track is net retention, which is a function on your expansion of the revenue on the accounts. So upsell and cross-sell, and the churn or downsell you experience. Then you obviously can track specifically on churn or renewal. You can track renewal rates, right? And Obviously, you want to minimize your churn you have, so you want to maximize your renewal rate. Then you can track things like the NPS of the client base, or even break this down to the specific user groups or personas. You vice versa, you can track CSAT, right? And you can track these kind of satisfaction scores along different points of the client journey. You can track this. You can track satisfaction scores, for instance, after you've completed an onboarding, 3 months after you have completed an onboarding, 12 months into the journey, and so on a weekly basis. It really depends then also how the users are using your product. Is it on a daily basis, monthly basis, once a quarter? I don't know. But these are, I think, the most important metrics. And a lot of these metrics will go back to how do clients perceive value along the client journey, right? And the client journey is really everything. And then it's super straightforward then to measure them, right? You can have surveys, in-product surveys, automated emails, all that kind of stuff.
And if we now take a look at the future, where do you think customer success is going in the next few years, and how will it evolve as SaaS companies scale and the market changes?
Yeah, good question. I think we now with AI, I mean, so AI and all these different things which will be which will be possible to do with agentic capabilities. People now talk a lot about sales, about the sales side. Obviously, it doesn't make sense, right? Because the most important thing for a company is the revenue pipeline, right? So if you can use AI to get more revenue, that's where you should start. But the concepts apply to customer success as well, because obviously you have a lot of repetitive tasks in customer success. You have a lot of tasks where you just aggregate information. So if you think about preparing for a client call or a QBR or an escalation meeting, or your boss is joining a call and he or she wants to be briefed, to just bring them up to date, you need to go to your CRM, look at your different notes. Then your notes from previous calls might be in different systems. It might be in an email, at a Notion page. You might have a CRM like HubSpot or Pipedrive where you keep notes. Then you might have a different customer success system. You have handover notes from sales. You have usage, right? In terms of speaking about KPIs to track, right? Product is usually the one informing usage, but customer success can work with that. So you have product usage and usage patterns of different users, which you can process to get an idea on how the client is working with the product. But all this is different data sources, and all this needs to be aggregated into one opinion. And I think AI just has a super strong use case for doing all this preparation work. So you just have to look from a kind of executive standpoint on, okay, these are the usage patterns. And already we see that there is a certain drop off in a certain user group with the client in a certain country. We had the client asking, like submitting 10 different support tickets last week alone. This ties back to one single cause. And we know that this cause is important to the economic buyer because we have it somewhere in the notes. All this can be done by AI. So what it means is, in the end, that's great if you work in customer success and don't have to do that anymore. But I think the same rule applies to customer, like to sales and marketing, and applies to customer success. An individual person can do more work than before. They can handle more clients. They have to dive deeper on the human relationship, on really the hard stuff, right? Speaking of the value proposition. And that also means you need less people.
Yeah.
I think that's just a reality across the entire customer
Yeah.
unit. And you rely on people who really, really dive deep on what the client wants, the really hard stuff. So there's a lot of upside, but there's also a lot of changes which are going
A
to
new
come.
reality.
Yeah.
We will finish up with a rapid fire question. You didn't see them, so I'm very curious myself, like what you will say. First off, what's the biggest misconception about customer success you hear again and again?
That it's just like customer support or some form of customer service. I think for B2B SaaS at least, and for a lot of complex products, it really is a core function to drive your business. And in terms of numbers, customer success will control your retention rate. And Without a functioning retention rate, it's super hard to grow a business.
What's a small habit that has an outsized impact on customer success effectiveness?
To always ask yourself, what's the next milestone or the next objective I want to work towards with my clients.
Mhm,
It brings you, like, this outcome focus brings you out of the habit, I'm gonna go into a call because there is a call.
mhm, mhm. And last question, especially with our slogan, I really want to know from you our slogan, how to scale as a business from Europe while staying sane. How do you stay sane in all of this hyper growth environments you're juggling your things?
Good question. Yeah, I think so. On the one hand, there is things like write-ups, maybe on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, where you really take time to reflect on, from my personal perspective, what went well, what didn't go well, what do I want to focus on next, and why, and then constantly reflect on that. I think obviously then, to always remind yourself that it's work and you have to put work into a box, and there is a time when you have to close that box and you just open it up the next day at 9 a.m. or something like that. You really constantly have to remind yourself on that. Yeah, I think these are really the most important things, and to be really strict on some habits on your day, like allocate time on when you work on emails or when you do a call, or try to steer your tasks into a direction that fits you, right? Don't have these Slack messages popping up all the time, or you immediately read an email or something like that.
Time boxing as well.
Time boxing, and be the one who tries to be in control of your tasks and not the other way around, right?
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk with you about it. Yeah, I guess people can follow the gradient and also find you
Yeah,
on
they should.
LinkedIn, or where should they reach out to?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, obviously, right? Our show, and then do a session with marketing with you. That's really the entire client journey.
We will. Thanks, and see you soon.